This is the craziest thing. I'm on Pathwork 27. So, I actually recorded 26 and then I realized I already did 26. Okay. Pathwork 27. Escape possible also on the path. Greetings in the name of the Lord. I bring blessings for all of you, my friends, since the majority of human beings have, in some basic way, a wrong attitude, psychologically or spiritually speaking. One of the first things when man commences on the path is that often a change must take place in his life. And it often happens that man is not even aware of this basically wrong attitude. Yet, due to his otherwise sincere desire to go on this path of self development, self recognition, or purification, or whatever other name you choose to give it, guidance starts in. Partly from guardian spirits, partly emanating from his own higher self, that wishes to draw man's attention to this wrong attitude. This does not only hold true for those people who are very new at it. As a matter of fact, we often observe human beings who are sincerely desirous to walk on this path, who are open in many respects, who are genuine truth seekers, and yet they are blind in one or two respects concerning their own inner makeup. This applies even to people who have discovered many truths, who are advanced in some ways, yet there is this one blind spot in them, this one resistance towards facing their outer and inner dilemmas. Their outer and inner dilemmas. Oh, yes, the outer conflicts are always regarded, and you all know, for I have said this many times, the outer conflict is but a reflex of the inner one. But man so often has the wrong attitude. In a very subtle way, he thinks if he is trying in a certain way to advance spiritually, this outer conflict will eventually cease. And he somehow expects conditions to change according to his own ideas. Preconceived ideas he has formed because of this wrong basic attitude. So, he overlooks the simple fact that first his ideas have to change due to recognition that has to be worked for before the vexing conditions have a chance to change too. So man finds himself at a certain crucial point on at this path in a vicious cycle. He waits for a change of his condition while the conditions wait for him to change his ideas. So I want to draw your attention to this, my friends. Not only those friends who are here, not only those friends here who are truly beginning this path now, but this applies often even stronger to those who have been on the path for quite some time and who have been quite sincere in their endeavors. You see, my friends, you have to try hard not to evade the issues anymore. Your conflicts, your worries, let me read that again. You see, my friend, you have to try hard to evade the issues anymore. This you are constantly doing, evading issues. Sit down quietly, my friends, and consider calmly what your worries, your conflicts are. These may be manifold. In one case, it may be a problem of human relationship. In another case, something else. But whatever the problem is, be aware that this problem is in direct connection with an inner wrong attitude of yours. Pray for recognition, for guidance, for enlightenment in this respect. If you search in this direction at all, if you are really open to find this particular answer, to see the connection of your outer problem with an inner one, guidance can be given, or rather the recognition will come to you. For often the guidance is there, but you refuse to see it. You refuse to see the signs, the many pointed signs that are constantly given you. You go on turning away from this particular issue. You search in another way. You make excuses for yourself. You try to tell yourself that your outer problem has other connections. Now, my friends, to be on this path in itself, to be on this path in itself is no guarantee of escape. You all know that anything can be an escape, certainly religion and even this path. If you take, for instance, kind of tricky reading words that are given here, interpret them in the wrong way, in a way to suit your own self-deception. If you are blind to that part of the teaching, that could open your eyes. But there is something in you that struggles against it, so you busily do not hear that which could be useful for you, while you continue to be very much impressed by things that may be true and beautiful, but are less important for your particular case. Then it is escape. Do not believe that simply being on this path, simply following some of my advice, simply reading these lectures, or simply by meditating and praying every day is a sure sign that you can face yourself, or that you do not escape, or that you do not escape that in you, that you do not escape that in you that is as yet unsolved. Let me read that again because that's a really tough sentence. Do not believe that simply being on this path, simply following some of my advice, simply reading these lectures, or simply by meditating and praying every day is a sure guarantee that you can face yourself, or that you do not escape that in you that is as yet unsolved. This may surprise you, my friends, but it is important to understand. Everything you do, it is always the question how you do it. The fact that you are doing such and such is not sufficient, and will never be a guarantee that it will lead you out of darkness, out of your own darkness. So it all depends entirely how you go about it, what you are willing to face. And now, my friends, I want to say this. That which you go so, sorry, I'm a little tired. And now, my friends, I want to say this. That which you so often avoid facing is not necessarily something that is deeply covered in your subconscious. Oh no. It very often is right in front of your nose. It is so obvious. It is so simple that you do not want to see it. You often look for answers too far away. You strive for things that may be much harder to find, but that which is immediately in front of you, you continue to disregard. It is true that many people who are spiritually not very advanced as yet seem to get away with so much. But if you have attained a certain level in spiritual development, even though you do escape from some of your inner conflicts, the stronger the repercussions must be if you continue stubbornly to do so. So you may not be able to get away as others do. And this may be a very good road direction for you, because this must, in a way, be a confirmation for you where you stand, or what is wrong with the way you work spiritually, that there is something wrong that you overcome. So let me say that again. But if you do, and this may be a very good road direction for you, because this must, in a way, be a confirmation for you where you stand, or what is wrong with the way you work spiritually, that there is something wrong that you have not seen. But if you do not let this alternative out of sight, if you struggle with yourself and overcome the apparent resistance, you will feel within you by recognizing it and praying for help. Then the recognition will come. It must come. All the outer signs which point to the solution will all of a sudden begin to make such clear sense to you. It will become so logical. It will make a complete picture. And that which you had expected to change somehow, according to your own ideas from outside, will then actually for the first time begin to change from the inside, because you have made a change in your attitude. And therefore, you will do something different as a result of it. An outer action. Once you have discovered that, you will see it is true, that your free will is very powerful. Yet your free will alone, without the help of God and the guidance given, will give you, if you choose the proper attitude, is nothing. That realization will come to you, but you have to begin by making a change in yourself. How to begin? That may be the question for some of you, my dear friends. And here I say to you, it is not as difficult as it may seem. To begin with, to try to formulate your own problems in the simplest terms. Simplify it. Do not make it so complicated. Whatever outer problem there is, try to bring it in connection with your various faults. In the last lecture, I have given you a task. I have told you to go about finding out your various weaknesses and shortcomings. So try to find a connection between this problem and some of your faults. And at first sight, this may seem impossible, entirely unconnected, but I assure you it is not. It never is. There is usually not just one fault responsible, because one fault is always connected with another. There's a whole nucleus. They all interchange. So if you can connect these various shortcomings with your problem, half the battle is won. If you do not as yet clearly realize the connection, if you perhaps sense or feel if you perhaps, let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Sense or feel, it is 3. Hold on. If you perhaps sense or feel something but cannot quite make the connection, pray sincerely, openly for this realization. The answer is then very near, my friends. Whoever is really open and truly desirous to find an answer, disregarding all resistances, must receive it, no matter what. without exception. So try to do that, my dear ones. Every one of you has something with which he is not quite satisfied in his life, perhaps a desire that is unfulfilled or some problem, big or small. Take your faults and weigh them, deliberate on them. What could be directly or indirectly responsible? And then go a step further. You all know that each fault is a violation of some spiritual law, and I intend to go into this much more thoroughly as we go on with this course, with this series of lectures. You may then perhaps present faults to me in a lecture, and I will show you which spiritual law is broken by this particular fault. And this will then, at the same time, give you the proper meditation how to handle this fault. And so you can make further connections if you start meditating on the violations of the spiritual law by this fault of yours that is responsible for your immediate problem. And I can promise you results if you go about it this way. In this way, this path will not be another form of escape. Then it will be reality as it should be. Then it will bring you to the most important thing that this earth life stands for, namely facing yourself, underlined. Then it will be reality as it should be. Then it will bring you to the most important thing that this earth life stands for, namely facing yourself. Try to remember this. Do not go over this superficially. Reread it carefully. Ask yourself whether you are willing to do it. This may be something new to you. You may have tried other things in other ways, but try it in this manner now. And then, my friends, try to observe with a little distance, with a little detachment, your own reaction when you do this. And that should be a very interesting phenomena to you. That should furnish you with some clue about the conflicting currents in your own soul. For there is this one part of you that truly desires to advance and to sacrifice the comfort of self-deception. But there is also this other part of you that struggles violently against it. And if you can bring yourself to view these conflicting parts of yourself like an innocent bystander, trying not to be emotionally involved in it, for the moment at least, then you will know what is going on in you and how much this resisting part of yours is responsible for all of your trials and tribulations in life. And that is very important. When you go about following through what I am just advising you now, do not take it for granted that because of your outer goodwill and sometimes perhaps superficial good intentions, this resisting part of you is something to belittle, something that does not have to be reckoned with as a powerful opponent. That is no good. You have to face that part in yourself too, not merely the fault itself. You have to realize there is a side in you that does not want what the other side in you wishes. To recognize this discrepancy is the most important factor of all, because so far you have always rationalized the fighting part. You were so affected by this negative side in you that the positive side in you that wants the right and wise thing was overpowered. And you rationalize it away with all sorts of explanations. And then, my friends, even the most intelligent of you, even the wise ones otherwise, become very blind and very unintelligent in this one respect because of evasion. And evasion is blindness. Blindness is the contrary of light or enlightenment. There are three major parts to be dealt with on this path of purification: the conscious mind, the unconscious, and the subconscious. The latter two are not at all the same. The unconscious is that which could be conscious if you would choose to look in the proper direction. It is that you are simply unaware of it because your inner gaze is pointed in another direction. But the moment you change the direction of your view, it becomes conscious. It is very much there on the surface. You have to make this distinction very clearly. When you begin on this path, as I have explained to you last time, you first deal with the conscious. And I have given you first-hand advice how to go about it, how to simply formulate that in your mind in a concise way, in an organized manner. This is actually really interesting to do. That which is already conscious. But before you delve into the subconscious, you have to solve first the unconscious. And what I have explained to you in this lecture so far is the unconscious. And I have shown you here how to deal with it. Only after you have eliminated some of these problems will we consider how to discover the subconscious layers that are important for you to become aware of. There may be many images that have formed during your during your early youth by which your life is affected now. And some of these images you bring with you from previous incarnations of life. Of from previous incarnations, of course, but due to their existence in your soul, I gotta take this up, I'm hot now. Due to their existence in your soul, incidents occurred in your life that brought them to the surface in the right type of spiritual progress. Everything that is pertaining to your growth will be made aware at the proper time in the proper manner. The borderline between these three divisions, conscious, unconscious, subconscious, can only be clearly defined, but generally you should keep this in mind. So I'm giving you this task, my friends, although many of you have not as yet really fulfilled the task I have given you last time. But I cannot consider that because we have to go on. Even if you have not accepted my advice or followed it through, you may do so later. You sometimes may not do it in the exact order I'm giving these steps to you. I have mentioned that also at the beginning. You may feel what is most relevant for you first. But those of you who have followed through my advice, try now to look at the unconscious, that which you are unaware of, but which is right in front of your nose, by taking your immediate hardships or problems and handling them in the way I've shown you. And now I will mention three main faults in the human character. Incidentally, you may notice that number 3 occurs again. There is a significance in this, but this is only as an aside. To get back, these 3 main faults from which stem directly or indirectly all your various individual shortcomings are self-will, pride, and fear. Self-will, pride, and fear. This is very important, my friends, for you to realize. You may not think fear is a fault, and yet I am telling you it is. If you would have a faultless person, he would be unafraid. You all know that the opposite of fear is love, but this knowledge in itself will not be sufficient for you to understand why fear is a fault. First, you should understand that these 3 main faults are connected with one another: self-will, pride, and fear. It would be hardly possible that you have 1 or 2 of these above mentioned qualities and the third is entirely absent. But what may be possible is that 1 or 2 of these 3 may be unconscious to you, not necessarily subconscious, but unconscious. You are simply not aware of it. Well, the third is quite strongly apparent even to yourself. Thus, it is very important to make this daily review, to check your reactions, all you have felt during the day just passed in response to seemingly unimportant incidents. If you try to formulate concisely an unpleasant inner reaction of yours, you will always come to the conclusion that most of the time there is an element of fear involved. Fear, perhaps, that other people do not do what you wish, do not act according to your liking. In other words, if there is a strong will, self-will, the fear automatically coexists that this self-will will not be gratified. Or there is a fear that your pride may be hurt. If you had no self-will, you would not have to fear that it will not be gratified. So you can see the connection. These subtle, smoldering fears, as mentioned here, are infinitely more frequent, also more harmful than the obvious pronounced fears. So if you begin to check your various impressions of the day, your own reactions, you can then see where the elements of fear come in, with which other of these main faults explained here, there, may be connected with, and to what extent. So begin to observe these inner reactions of yours and analyze them in these terms without trying to change yourself immediately, because, as I always say, feelings cannot be changed by a mere act of will, but they will change if you first learn to observe. If you first learn to observe them, to get a little distance from yourself, to see their underground workings, the workings of your various soul currents, merely by doing this consistently for some time, eventually, little by little, these strong reactions and inner desires and pressures will become weaker. They will not cease right away, but they will become weaker. They will occur less frequently until eventually you will continue to do this in connection with the adequate and pertaining prayer. They will cease and leave you a liberated person. Before I turn to your questions now, there are two other points I want to go into at this time. They are not entirely connected with the foregoing. Many of my friends here seriously desire to fulfill a task for God's vineyard. But have you ever asked yourself whether you are truly ready for it? And when I say, are you ready? I do not mean that you have to have a great deal of knowledge, because this intellectual knowledge, so far as it will be necessary, will be given to you in one way or another. But in other ways, are you really willing to sacrifice? For sacrifice is necessary. Ask yourself why you want to do it. Oh, yes, there is a part of you also that is very sincere, that wants this out of pure reason or motives. But discover this other part that mingles in, that may also wish to do it, but is not yet ready to pay attention or the necessary price, and merely wants it because ego gratification. This part wants it mainly in order to receive recognition, appreciation, or perhaps to be a heroic figure. No, my friends. First, you have to work in very small ways before you are worthy to fulfill such tasks. You may not expect that God's world is lenient in this respect. You must realize it is not yourself alone anymore that is concerned. There are other people involved, and if you let them down, disappoint them in any way, it will count very much against you. You have to figure that you will work for many years without any recognition. You must really learn to sacrifice, not only to give up your comfort, some of your time, and so on, but other things, my friends. Not outer things, which would be so much easier, inner things. You must often give up that which is most difficult for you, your pride, perhaps your fear, or your self-will, or your egotism, or a particular resentment or resistance to a person. To fulfill a task demands a great severity with the self by the self. It means you have to count not with recognition from any human side for a long time, but with people who take your help for granted at best. At worst, they will be against you. You have to count that for a long time, nobody but God and yourself will know what you are doing. You are still willing to do it under the circumstances. You will be tested for it. And if we recognize that you are ready, we may try it. But it may only be a try. For many are called, but few are chosen. Some more advice, my friends. And this is an outer detail. When you sit here or at any other times when you meditate, I would advise you not only be entirely relaxed, but not sit with your legs crossed or your arms. Hold your hands with your palms upward, for in a good meditation, whether it is a trance session or simply a meditation, strong forces are present, and in the palms of your hands you are most receptive, and these forces can better penetrate into you through them. There may be physical healing forces present, or some spiritual force that you need, and perhaps a force that will help you to overcome some of your psychological problems. But whatever it is important for you. But if you have your members crossed, you cut off this current. This is why I advise this, that I advise this to you. Sit all the time like this. To sit all the time like this may seem like a hardship at first, but if you learn to be entirely relaxed, you will be able to sit like this for hours. You will not feel it. You will almost feel your hands lifted like this. You will not even have to support them in your lap anymore. They will lift by their own accord as though an outer power is at work. You will not feel any weight in them. You can succeed in this with not too much forced concentration, for you should be entirely relaxed, and it will be a very beneficial benefit on you. And now, my friends, I am ready for your questions, and I'm not going to read the questions. You have to read the lecture yourself, and that is lecture 27.